Podcast. The Station Map, free series full scripts, episodes 1 to 4.
There's a question most people never ask directly. They circle it. They feel it at 2 a.m. They sense it when they're sitting in a room full of people who love them and still feel completely alone. The question is not, what is wrong with me? The real question is, which station am I in? Welcome to MetaMind. I'm Jelani Garaui. And this is the first episode of the Station Map.
I want to start with something that might sound strange. Every prophet you have ever heard of, whether you are a believer, a skeptic, or an atheist who has never opened a religious text in your life, every one of them describes a state that you have already lived. Not a religious state. Not a theological position. A human state. Abraham, the one who broke the idols of his people, he is not a story about religion. He is a map of what happens when a person realizes that everything they were given to believe no longer holds. Moses, the one who confronted the Pharaoh, he is not a story about ancient Egypt. He is a map of what happens when a person finally names the system inside themselves that has been running their life without their permission. The Christ figure, the one who said the kingdom of heaven is within, he is not a theological claim. He is a map of what it looks like to move through the world without defending a self-image. These are not sacred figures in this series. They are not historical figures either. They are maps of inner stations. And you are already in one of them. The question is only, which one? Before I go further, I want to name something. You have probably already tried the other versions of this conversation. The personality tests. The Enneagram. The MBTI. The trauma frameworks. The inner child work. The chakra systems. The shadow work journals. Some of it was useful. Some of it gave you language for things you felt but couldn't say. But here is what most of those frameworks miss. They tell you what you are. They don't tell you where you're going. They give you a category. They don't give you a direction. A person who scores as an Enneagram 4 at 25 is not the same person at 35, after 3 losses and a decade of friction with the world. The category stays the same. But the person has moved. Or not moved. And that's often the problem. What I'm offering in this series is different. Not a type. Not a fixed identity. A position in a movement. A station, which implies that you came from somewhere, and that you are going somewhere else. The station you are in right now is not who you are. It is where you are in the architecture of your own becoming. In the MetaMind framework, there are 5 primary stations of consciousness. And I want to be clear, these are not levels of enlightenment. This is not a hierarchy where station 5 is better than station 1. And everyone at the bottom is somehow failing. They are phases. Necessary phases. You cannot be in station 3 without having passed through station 2. And passing through does not mean you have escaped it. It means you have integrated it enough to move. Let me give you a first sketch of each one. Station 1, the wounded self. This is the station of the original fracture. The person in this station carries a sense, sometimes buried so deep they don't recognize it as a sense at all, that something fundamental was taken from them, or was never given. It might show up as chronic low-level anxiety that has no clear cause. It might show up as a feeling of being slightly outside everything, watching other people belong to their lives in a way that you can't quite access. It might show up as a persistent inability to identify what you actually want, as opposed to what you were trained to want. This station is named for Adam in the ancient texts, not because of sin, not because of religion, but because Adam is the figure who experienced the original loss of an undefended state. The fall from a condition of wholeness into a condition of self-consciousness. Every human knows this station. Most people were born into it. Station 2, the seeker. This is the station of the person who has begun to suspect that the world they were handed is not the world. Not in a paranoid way. In an honest way. The seeker is the person who looks at the beliefs they were raised with, religious, political, family mythology, and feels a kind of vertigo. not because the beliefs are necessarily wrong, but because they were never chosen. This station is named for Abraham, the one who, before he became a patriarch, was a person sitting with the idols of his people, watching them, and thinking, "These don't move. They can't help me. I don't know what I'm looking for. But I know this isn't it." The risk of this station: the seeker can become addicted to seeking, can mistake the motion of questioning for the motion of arriving, can build an identity out of being the person who doesn't believe in systems, which is itself a system. Station 3, the Liberator. This is the station of the person who has identified what has been oppressing them, and is in the process of confronting it. Not metaphorically. In their daily life. The Pharaoh that Moses confronted was not only a king. In the internal reading, the Pharaoh is the voice inside that says, "You cannot leave. You need me. Without my permission, you are nothing." Every person has a Pharaoh structure. It might be a parent's voice. It might be a career they chose because it was the only identity they could imagine themselves being allowed. It might be a relationship that has become a definition rather than a choice. The Liberator is the person who has named it. The risk: liberation can become its own kind of rigidity. The person who defines themselves by what they are breaking free from has given their Pharaoh a different kind of permanent address. Station 4, the Eraser. This station is the most misunderstood of all 5. The Christ figure, in the architectural reading, not the theological one, is the figure who moves through the world without a defense of self. Not a person who has no self, but a person who has released the need for the self to be protected, validated, maintained. This is not passivity. The Christ figure in the text is extraordinarily active. He heals. He confronts. He speaks with authority. But the authority does not come from a position. It comes from an absence of need for a position. This station is the hardest to explain because it sounds like the end of personality. It isn't. It's the beginning of a self that doesn't spend half its energy defending itself. The risk: this station can be performed rather than inhabited. A person can learn the language of egolessness while running a very sophisticated ego operation underneath. Station 5, the Integrated. In the framework, this is named for the highest station, the one that, in the Islamic tradition, is called al-Maqam al-Muhammadi, the Muhammadan station. I want to be careful here, because this is a station that is easy to misread as a religious position. It is not. What this station describes, in purely human terms, is a person who can hold contradictions without being destroyed by them. Not a person who has resolved all contradictions, but a person who has made peace with the fact that they won't. The person in this station can be confident without arrogance, can hold grief and gratitude simultaneously, can be fully committed to their path and fully open to being wrong about it. This station is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a different kind of movement. Now, I just described 5 stations, and you probably felt something shift slightly when I described one of them. Not a dramatic recognition. More like a small landing. A quiet yes. That recognition is information. The MetaMind quiz, which you can find at the link in the description, is designed to help you identify not just which station you're in, but which aspect of that station is most alive for you right now. Because within each station, there is a spectrum. There is early station movement and late station movement. There is the beginning of the seeker's fracture and the more advanced version where the seeker has been in motion for a while and is starting to find the friction exhausting. The quiz takes about 7 minutes. The questions are not what you would expect from a psychological assessment. They are situational. They describe moments, and you recognize yourself in them. When you finish, you receive a station map, a reading of where you are and what the architecture of your next movement looks like. That map is free. What you do with it is up to you. I want to end this first episode with something I want you to carry. The ancient texts, all of them, the Quran, the Torah, the Gospel, The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Greek myths, they were not written to give you information. They were written to give you mirrors. The story of Moses is not a history. It is a description of a movement that is happening right now, in some form, and every person who is in the process of naming what has been running them. The story of Abraham is not a religion. It is a description of the specific kind of loneliness that comes when you have stopped believing in the idols and haven't yet found what to believe in instead. The story of Adam is not a moral lesson about disobedience. It is a description of the moment when self-consciousness arrived, when the human being first became a subject watching themselves, rather than simply existing. You already know these stories. What MetaMind does is return them to you as maps of yourself. In the next episode, we get deeper into one specific moment from one of the oldest scenes in the human record, a scene involving a crow, a killing, and a man standing over the body of his brother, not knowing what to do with what he had done. And in that scene, we will find one of the most precise descriptions of the perception gap that you will encounter anywhere in the literature on consciousness. The link to the quiz is in the description. The link to episode 2 is there as well. I'm Jelani Garaui. This is MetaMind.